You're listening to Coffee and Sports from Wire to Wire Sports Network on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports, the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network. Thank you so much. Thank you for making us part of your morning routine. I am Chris, and that over there, that is the NFL genius himself. Gene, how are you this morning, sir?
I'm phenomenal. Doing pretty good. Ready to rock and roll. Coming off another Eagles win. I'm ready. Feeling good.
We are going to span the sporting world this morning. We are only a handful of days removed from the fight. We'll call it a fight.
Okay.
From the fight between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. And the internet sleuths, Gene, have broken down the footage, and now they're seeing some inconsistencies from the fight. Now we have footage that has hit the interwebs where it looks like Tyson could be pulling punches, Gene. It looks like Tyson had a couple of openings during the bout where he had a clear shot to clean the clock of Jake Paul, and he didn't take it. Or we're seeing moments where it looks like he did throw a punch, but he just turned it in a little bit and didn't actually allow it to connect. By the way, I'm not seeing as many of these videos, but I'm sure if we had any Jake Paul fans in the world and they wanted to create some videos of their own, they could probably show you similar footage where Jake Paul had openings to absolutely whale Tyson from like round 5 on, and he didn't. Gene, it was no secret what this was going to be. This was a spectacle. It was a money-making opportunity. It was not going to be the destruction of a 58-year-old man on Netflix in front of millions and millions and millions of viewers. And you have to understand, if you know anything about business, this also wasn't going to be Tyson knocking out Jake Paul in round 1. Like, neither one of those things was ever actually going to happen, guys. I'm sorry. Like, if you thought going into this, one of those things was actually going to happen, you don't know the type of business people the two of these people are. Mike Tyson wants money, and he wanted to make money, and he made a butt load of money. And Jake Paul and his people, Gene, they're not idiots. Look at the fights they've taken. They've taken them very carefully to make sure that Jake comes out either winning or having a very good chance to win. That's all this was. Am I wrong? I get it. Like, I'm not saying the videos are wrong. I mean, I've seen them. Yes, I understand what you're looking at. But every time I see the videos, Gene, I just go back to my initial thought of, what did you think this was from the beginning?
I mean, scripted entertainment. That's what it was. I mean, I feel like that it's WWE. His brother Logan's in WWE. Both of them put on a show and made a lot of money. And I got to give Jake Paul all the credit in the world. He gets people to tune in. And when you make someone hate you, like, this is the whole thing that Floyd Mayweather was such a great gate. When you make people hate you, they tune in hoping you'll lose. Like, the number one comment was, I hope Tyson knocks him out. Yeah, no crap. That's the whole goal of this. Like, it's just intelligent. I don't know if, like, I don't know how, like, you expected a 58-year-old Mike Tyson to get in the ring with a 27-year-old Jake Paul and it to be anything other than what you watched. And honestly, if you watch the end of that fight, like the 5th to 10th round, Jake Paul really lays off of him. Like, really could have hurt him and just didn't. So I think that both of them had a mutual understanding that we weren't going to knock each other out. And you knew that Tyson was up for that when he agreed to a fight with Roy Jones Jr. just a few years ago, in which they agreed not to knock each other out. They were just going to spar. So Tyson already knows how to do that. He's done that before in a money grab. I don't know. It's funny to me that people tuned into that. There was actual lines that were like on like offshore sites of betting lines on who you could bet on in this fight.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. Like, if you got Jake Paul for minus 300 or less, it's a landslide. It's the easiest bet you ever make.
Yeah, there were actual betting lines on offshore sites. There was a couple of videos that popped up on the internet of people actually losing some Mike Tyson money on offshore sites. Like I just guys, like you said, you Tyson's done this before.
Yeah.
Not with someone the level of Jake Paul as far as notoriety. He's done it with someone with the level of notoriety in the boxing world before, but
Correct.
as far as social media and drawing power goes, this is all that was, and it was made pretty clear early on. Tyson looked explosive in round 1 and for part of round 2. And then his 58-year-old legs caught up with him. Like, what did we think was? But he looked so good in the warm-up video. So he looked good in the edited warm-up videos. Like, that's what we were. Come on now, guys. Come on now. Gene, to the surprise of absolutely nobody except maybe delusional Yankee fans, which, by the way, most of us are not. Juan Soto turned down his qualifying offer. This is on the heels of, well, I know this is on the heels of the owner of the New York Mets saying, I don't care what anyone offers Soto, we'll go 50 million higher guaranteed. Oh my gosh, Gene. First of all, I think most intelligent baseball fans knew the Mets were probably going to bid the highest. Like, coming into this conversation saying, well, we might not be able to outbid the Mets. I don't know if that was ever going to be the end all be all. But we knew the Mets were probably going to bid the highest. So him coming out and saying, we'll see your number by at least 50, that shouldn't be too shocking, because like most delusional organizations in sports, the Mets see this as a lottery that if they can win it, it's going to somehow completely change their fortunes as a franchise, not realizing you're the Mets. Like, yes, if you somehow land Juan Soto and you give him all that money, you also still have to do all the other things that good baseball organizations do to win baseball games, especially over the 15 years it looks like you're going to give him potentially, because that's what he is reportedly wanting in this deal. So Mets fans, just because you're going to bid the highest for Juan Soto, great. I fully believe you're going to do that. But I hope you understand that getting Juan Soto and winning championships in the Major League Baseball are two completely different things. And the Mets have proven over the years they're really bad at winning World Series titles. And they're really bad at, doing the general manager thing and developing talent and hiring the right people. So if you think Juan Soto is going to fix all of that, okay, fair enough. And also, no offense to Met fans, but if you think Juan Soto doesn't realize that, I also struggle with that a little bit, because Juan Soto has said a couple of things. He has said he wants to go to a franchise where he can win. Now, he's not an idiot. He also wants his money. But he has also said he wants to go to a franchise that is willing to show they want him, which means pay me. That is code to all of Major League Baseball. I'm not taking a discount for the Yankees. I'm not taking a discount for my hometown. I'm not taking a discount to reunite in Washington where things began. He wants his money. All right. So you better show him the money that he thinks he's worth, and then he wants to win. Gene, I get the Mets are going to offer the most money, and they might offer the most money by a lot. But is that where he is ultimately going to end up? If it's true, he wants to win. Because you can't go to the Mets and tell me your decision was based mostly on wanting to win World Series. If you go to the Mets, it was money.
I think he's going to the Mets. I've said that before free agency started. Remember when he turned down 14 years, $365 million to the Washington Nationals? And they're like, oh, he's like, he wants to win. I'm like, no, he doesn't. He hits free agency. He's going to make almost double that. And guess what? He's going to hit free agency and make almost double that. I don't ever believe it's about winning. I don't. I think that he's full of crap. I think he told you that in his exit interviews, that it wasn't about winning. He said it was about money. He's like, I'm not loyal to the Yankees. I'm loyal to who wants me. And all 30 teams, 31 teams, 32 teams have this opportunity to pay me. I think he ends up going to the Mets. I think the Dodgers and Phillies meetings are just to get the highest price they can get offered. Like, hey, like, what's the highest price? So Steve Cohen can outbid it by $50 million. I truly believe that. Like, I believe he ends up a Met. I said he was going to be a Met before the season started. I knew that the Mets wanted him. The Mets want him more. It just is what it is. And they have bigger pockets to spend. I actually don't take this the wrong way. I love Juan Soto as a player. I don't think he's worth the money he's about to sign for. And I think if you were going to allocate that money, you would allocate it into 3 positions. And if you're the Yankees, you go out and get yourself a starting pitcher, and you can get yourself a guy that can protect Judge in the lineup. And you could do both of those things without signing Juan Soto. Just an opinion. I think the Yankees end up better off without signing him. But I think he ends up ultimately with the Mets. I think the Mets will just pay him more. And guys, it's going to be really funny. You're going to see this offseason how one, I guess, run in the playoffs is going to screw the Mets in the future again, because they're going to overpay Pete Alonso because he got hot at the right time. We were 1 pitch away from Pete Alonso never playing for the Mets again. If he doesn't hit that home run versus Milwaukee, he's gone. That's it. They already, they were saying goodbye to him, and that was it. It was done. And then he hit that home run, and now he's going to get overpaid by the Mets because the Mets fans can't fathom what life would be like without Pete Alonso. It's funny to me. They'll end up with Pete, and they'll end up with Juan, and they'll be a middle of the road team.
The one curious thing about Alonso is I think the Yankees are going to offer him a deal if the Mets don't go there. I don't know.
You can't if you're so essentially. Is Rizzo out of contract? Keep me honest.
Yeah.
Okay, so then maybe they can. But
Yeah.
the point is, you have to keep that. And this is something that I learned a long time ago. And the Phillies need to do this when Schwarber's contract's up. You have to keep that DH spot open, because if you're paying that many guys $100, $300, $400, $500 million, and Pete Alonso and Aaron Judge are going to basically trade time in that spot. Aaron Judge is not going to be a center fielder in 6 years.
No.
Good news for you. They're paying him to hit home runs. That's what they're paying him for.
To your point, I mean, if you take whatever, and the Yankees are not going to offer him close to what the Mets are going to offer him. So if you take whatever the Yankees, were comfortable offering him, and then you look at the free agent pitchers that are available, and there's a couple of decent ones. Buehler could hit the market from the Dodgers. You got Bieber, he could hit the market from the Guardians. You got a handful of, the pitcher from the Orioles who they got from Milwaukee, Burns, he could hit the market. There's a handful of upper echelon pitchers that any one of them joining the New York Yankees would make their rotation better. And then
two of Corbin Burns and Garrett Cole would be,
right,
in my opinion, more efficient for the Yankees than Juan Soto. Just giving you my honest opinion.
And then you look at, yes, there's a drop-off if you look at the outfield market after Juan Soto, obviously. But it's not to say there's not people out there that can't provide you the pop and can't provide you, by the way, better outfield defense than Juan Soto at a fraction of a cost. You got Anthony Santander.
He has a 14.5 range score. That's one of the worst ranges you can. I think he scored out of qualified outfielders, he was in the bottom 14% of outfielders.
You got Anthony Santander. He's available. He's going to cost you a fraction of what Soto is going to cost you. He's a switch hitter with power. You're looking at 25-ish home runs a year out of him. You got Tyler O'Neill. He was a Red Sox this season. He's got some pop in his bat. You're looking at 20, 25 home runs out of him. No, you're not going to find 40 home runs, 115. That's not out there after Soto. But you don't need that if you're the Yankees. You need someone to protect Aaron Judge. That's all you need. You need someone where they're like, oh, we're not going to pitch around this guy. That's what it is. And you can find that while updating and uploading your pitching. And there's some first baseman options out there. So I'm just saying, Yankee fans, calm down. It's not the end of the world if Soto doesn't come back. Now, if he doesn't come back and you do nothing, okay. Hit the panic button at that point. But I don't think we're going to go there. I think the Yankees are going to be a different team regardless. But I don't think we're going to go there. Gene, you got any issue with, because we saw it a lot going into the NFL this weekend. Former players just desperately wanting to call out their former teams. Sometimes literally not provoked at all. So, for example, Deshaun Elliott of the Pittsburgh Steelers was just looking to call the Miami Dolphins soft. My guy wasn't even asked about the Dolphins. He was asked about his upcoming matchup with the Ravens, and he somehow wove Miami into the conversation to take a shot at them. Like, I get it. Like, if you're a former player of a team, you're gonna go play the team. It's a storyline. You're gonna be asked about it. It is what it is. But for me, Gene, you got to read the room as far as, does anyone care? So it's different if you're a quarterback, I feel. That's a different situation. It's different if you are an impact player on defense. That's a different situation. But when if you're like, they asked Deontay Johnson, receiver, he had a comment. He clearly has feelings about leaving Pittsburgh. So they asked head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers the same question. His response was, we got bigger things to worry about when we are game planning than Deontay Johnson. He's not the top of our priority list. Like, and I love that answer because that's a real answer. Like, no one is game planning like, oh no, Deontay Johnson's on the other side of the ball. What are we going to do? Like, let's be realistic about these things. Gene, where do you fall on that?
And we love to, I could see exactly how you fall personal because you're a Miami Dolphins fan. Just like I fall personal when Javon Holland talks about Vic Fangio. Like, you feel it when it's your team, but it happens all across the league.
All the time.
It's just a bad breakup. It is what it is. Like, you have a bad breakup. They always want to talk about their ex. And more often than not, when they want to talk about their ex, they're just mad that the ex isn't there. And that's just the way it is. Deontay Johnson's upset he's not a Steeler still. Javon Holland is upset that the Miami Dolphins defense wasn't as good as it was under Vic Fangio.
Yep.
It is what it is. Like, these guys go out there and they're bent or they're upset over what they feel is perceived wrongs. And you're going to hear it all across the league. You are. And your eyes need to tell you the story of whether Miami's soft. I've watched Miami the last 2 weeks. They haven't looked soft. Now, beginning of the season, did Miami look soft? Sure. But the last 2 weeks of the season, their defense looks like they're getting all their players back, and they look like a better football team. Outside Brock Bowers, the Raiders really couldn't do anything versus them. It was Brock Bowers.
Damn, is he good? Holy cow.
But everyone knew that. Everyone knew that in the national championship when he was the number one option for Georgia. Brock Bowers is an elite tight end talent. He's George Kittle, and you're getting to watch George Kittle through his prime again. Great. But my point being is, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by it. I think it's, I don't want to say tacky, but I think it's a bad look on the players' end. I think it allows the media and the fans to really feel that you just can't move on. Everyone hates that guy that goes out on a date talking about, my ex did this to me, my ex did that to me. Like, move on. It's okay. You have a new home. Enjoy that home.
We're okay here. I'll tell you where it's not okay. Somehow it just keeps freaking getting worse. If you are a Jets fan, like, what the hell is happening in New York? The Jets fired general manager Joe Douglas. And then the story comes out that Woody Johnson, the owner of the New York Jets, he wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers a month and a half ago after they lose to the Denver Broncos. And he was basically, told no, talked out of it, however you want it to look, by the general manager and some of the other powers at be on that team. Gene, I saw that story and I said to myself, well, shoot, if I was the owner of any National Football League team and I wanted someone benched, goddamn, they'd be benched. Like, I don't know who's telling the owner they're not going to get their way, but okay, whatever. I guess I hire a GM to do their job. I hire a coach to do their job. Someone's got to keep me in check. It is what it is. But now Joe Douglas is out the door. Robert Saleh is out the door. They clearly weren't the problem, or they were the problem. And I think everyone's part of the problem with the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers is still their starting quarterback. By the way, he still wants to play, Gene, for multiple more years. He was asked about that a couple of weeks ago on the Pat McAfee show, and he said he still plans playing for multiple more years. The Jets do have an option to bring him back at a cost that, is all right for their salary cap situation. What are we doing in New York? What is it going to look like over the next handful of weeks? They've reached Chris's magical number. They're not going to the playoffs. They got their 8 losses. They can't actually bench Aaron Rodgers, can they? Because once they do that, he's not coming back. Yeah. I mean, if any part of them wants him back, you can't bench him, because that basically says you don't want him and he's not coming. So what do? You just ride it out and hope what? So you can make him want to come. Do you want him back? I have no idea. This is such a disaster.
So Woody Johnson is the type of owner. You watch this on Hard Knocks. If you really just paid attention during the Rex Ryan Hard Knocks, you watched. He's a meddling owner. He's always been that guy. And yeah, I mean, he's just a guy that gets too involved, and you can't get too involved. Remember the firing of Robert Saleh? It was my decision and my decision only to fire Robert Saleh. That's a bad decision. Bad decision, Woody, because the defense was number 2 in football, and now they're worse. Joe Douglas now takes the blame. Joe Douglas, just going to read this out for you. And in 6 years of drafting football players, he's drafted Garrett Wilson, offensive rookie of the year, Sauce Gardner, defensive rookie of the year, Breece Hall, top 5 running back, Will McDonald, who's a very good edge rusher, Braylon Allen, who's been a good running back this year, Jermaine Johnson, who's a good edge rusher, and Michael Carter II. That's not a bad resume for 6 years of drafting football players. Now, granted, Zach Wilson is on that list. Mekhi Becton is on that list. There's a lot of players that have been, every GM misses. It's going to happen. But that's not a bad group of drafting players. Would you tell, Chris, I'm going to ask you a question. When I ask you if the Jets have a top 5 roster in football, do you not think they have a top 5 roster in football?
I 100% think that. I said the Jets were going to be the ones that I thought had the best chance to win this division going into the season if everyone stayed healthy.
Correct. So they have Quentin Williams. They have Quentin Williams. They have Sauce Gardner. They have a great secondary as a whole. They have 2 good wide receivers. They have a great edge rushers. Their roster isn't the problem. Aaron Rodgers is the problem. And look, Woody Johnson goes in the media and goes, Robert Saleh, my firing wasn't the problem. Goes out and fires Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas wasn't the problem. The problem is you do not have a leader on the court, a leader on the field, in Aaron Rodgers, and he's not a leader amongst men. And yeah, if I'm the Jets, I get away from him. I get a new GM, a new coach. I marry the new coach to the quarterback. I know it's cheesy. I keep saying it, but I rebuild. I rebuild the right way. Davante Adams' contract's up. He's going to move on. You got a young wide receiver there in Garrett Wilson. Yeah, I move on. And Woody Johnson's got to stop meddling.
And if you're looking at the NFL landscape heading into next season, assuming the Jets don't bring Aaron Rodgers back and Aaron Rodgers still wants to play football, where does he play football next season? Who looks at Aaron Rodgers after this? And Mo and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and the question was simple. Does this stick to Aaron Rodgers? Because there's so many parallels to Brett Favre, right? Brett Favre left Green Bay. Brett was kind of pushed out of Green Bay at that point because they were tired of his will I, won't I retirement nonsense. And they had the backup and they had the replacement. They were ready to move on. And they just needed Brett to kind of ride off into the sunset. And he was a little unwilling to do so. But people forget, Gene, that Brett Favre, halfway through the season, Jets were one of the best teams in the NFL. They were one of the best teams in the NFL record-wise with Brett Favre as their starting quarterback. He hurts his shoulder. Everything kind of falls apart in the second half of the season because he's got no arm to throw the football with. And then they break up and he goes to the Vikings and does what he does there for a couple of years before he finally hangs it up. But Brett Favre was playing good football before he got injured as a New York Jet. Aaron Rodgers isn't playing good football. He's not horrible. He's not awful, but he's not playing good football. So now you have to, and then you have to take in everything else you take in with Aaron Rodgers. All the extra stuff that comes with having Aaron Rodgers on your team. And then you have to look at it and say, okay, he didn't play good football with the Jets. Plus he's Aaron Rodgers. Plus he's 40 years old. Plus he brings all this baggage in. Where is there a team that says we're a quarterback away, but thinks it's going to be different because weren't the New York Jets a quarterback away? And this is what happened.
Yep.
So now you need another team that's a quarterback away, but you have to convince the owner and the GM that yes, but it's different. It's different than the Jets situation for whatever reason, and that's why we need Aaron. I don't know if that team's going to exist.
I think there's two teams that you should look at, and they're both not a quarterback away, but they're two teams that are going to be in the market for a quarterback, and they're going to want to see what they have on their overall team. The one is, you don't have to look very far, the New York Giants. They just benched Daniel Jones, and they have Malik Neighbors. They're going to want to see what they have as an overall group. And that GM, Joe Schoen, who's already made an ass out of himself on Hard Knocks, is going to want to prove that with a good quarterback, he can still be a good GM. So that's one to look at. But I think the more interesting place is Tennessee. And I bring Tennessee up because they have zero money or capital invested in the quarterback position. They have wide receivers. You have Calvin Ridley. You have Treylon Burks. You have guys that, two running backs. You have a decent defense. You have a decent offensive line. You have a new quarterback that's not married to or new coach that's not married to any quarterback. I think Aaron Rodgers goes to Tennessee. I think that's probably the best fit for both. Him getting out of the New York media, getting back into that old Green Bay media, that old Tennessee media. I think that's the move for him. I really believe that. And I think that if Aaron Rodgers can insist on playing football, his best fit is Tennessee. Very winnable division, decent roster that's in place that just lacks quarterback play.
Obviously, with the benching of Daniel Jones, the New York Giants are ready for a reset. But, Gene, will Brian Daboll be the one to guide them through the reset? Because I like Brian Daboll. My Buffalo bias aside, I like Brian Daboll. And I think that Brian Daboll produced the best version up until what you see currently from Josh Allen. Will produce the best version of Josh Allen. So I feel like Brian Daboll's track record with quarterbacks has earned him a leash to say, if you give me a good one, a decent one, I can do things. I don't think Daniel Jones was ever that. Now, what kind of control he had over that situation as far as, how long Daniel started. Remember, Brian Daboll didn't give Daniel Jones $45 million a year. He didn't do that. He just said, I'll be the head coach of this team, knowing that Daniel Jones was the quarterback being paid all that money. I think the New York Giants would be foolish to let Daboll go. I think he has earned, because let's look at the team. The defense is not bad. If you watch the New York Giants play defense, they got some good stuff happening over there on the defensive side of the football. On the offensive side, they do have a couple of pieces. And like you said, what do those pieces look like with a better quarterback play? Do they look better? Because if they do, we're talking about a different situation right now. I think the Giants would be foolish not to give Daboll a chance to rebuild this. But, Gene, we know that in the NFL, patience is not always a virtue.
Well, if you're going to give him another opportunity, it either has to be with a bridge quarterback, which I don't think it will be with Aaron Rodgers, or you have to extend him. And if you extend it, because there's no, this is the same thing that happens in Chicago. Same thing happens with bad organizations. And you can tell how bad of an organization the Giants are because they're starting Tommy Cutlets instead of Drew Lock. Like they just passed them up on the depth chart. Stop. We're going to start Tommy Cutlets. Let's get the Italians involved. It's a bad organization, and bad organizations make bad moves. And you have two choices here. You have to clean house. You have to hire a new coach and draft a new quarterback, or you have to extend Daboll and allow him to draft a new quarterback. I think Quinn Ewers ends up in New York. I really believe that. The Texas quarterback. I think he's perfect for Brian Daboll's system, too. He's very Josh Allen-esque. If you had a complaint about Quinn Ewers in Texas, he's a little turnover prone.
Right.
And what has Brian Daboll shown you he knows how to fix? Turnover prone quarterbacks. So if you draft Quinn Ewers, you got to extend him. You got to give him 2-3 years with the quarterback. Unless it's an absolute dumpster fire and it's very obvious that Quinn Ewers isn't the guy, you have to extend him. You have to extend him.
Gene, let's talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. And we're gonna talk Buffalo in the same light as well. There's big games in the NFL, right? But at the end of the day, one game is one game. So even though some games mean more than others, the most level-headed fans will always try to say, "Well, it's one game, and I get it, I understand that." And I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth here. I'm going to go in both different directions with this conversation. But starting with the Ravens, Lamar Jackson has a Pittsburgh Steelers problem. If you cannot acknowledge that as a Ravens fan, then you are just being a Lamar and Ravens apologist, because the numbers don't lie. Lamar doesn't play good football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know that but Chris, it's more than one person out there. I get that. And every loss to the Steelers has not squarely been Lamar Jackson's fault. It's not like he just coughs it up and just gives it away at the end of every game. I understand. But there comes a point where if you keep losing to the same team over and over and over again, ask the Dolphins about the freaking Buffalo Bills, you have to acknowledge we have an issue. The Miami Dolphins can't beat Buffalo. Can't do it. Doesn't matter. Big, little, lose by 40, lose by 3, doesn't matter. Lamar Jackson is starting to get there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That being said, sorry, Gene, where do we get to the point where we look at it and we just say, because as a Dolphin fan, I just chalk it up to a loss. We're playing Buffalo. Doesn't matter where we're playing them. Miami can't beat Buffalo. Look at the last 6 years. It hasn't happened. We're going to take the L. I still watch the game. I still root for them. Of course I do. I'm a fan. But I'm taking the L. Are we at that point with the Ravens where you just say it's not a good matchup for whatever reason? Don't know why. Sure, they could beat them, but they're probably not going to beat them. It's not going to impact the rest of the season. Or do you look at it and say this is a bigger part of an issue with Lamar Jackson? Because what's his other issue that he tends to not be able to get over right now? Having his worst performance of the year at some point in the playoffs. Because you look at Lamar's years and MVP caliber performances, and then you say, okay, what were his 3 worst moments of the year? Oh, one of them happens to be in the playoffs. So where do you sit on that side of the spectrum of it being just one game, it being an issue, it being a bigger, kind of tell of what Lamar Jackson has going on and the hurdles he needs to overcome to get this team to the next step?
Some defensive coaches have great game plans against certain quarterbacks. I'm going to give you a lead up. It might be a little selfish, but it's a little lead up to what I'm about to answer. If you watched the Thursday night football game last week when the Eagles played the Commanders, for 3 quarters, the Philadelphia Eagles had 6 points. Now, granted, it looked a lot better for Philadelphia because the fourth quarter went their way and they end up getting on track and winning the football game. But Dan Quinn's career versus Jalen Hurts has been a lot of losses and a lot of low-scoring games for Philadelphia. It's just some coordinators just have quarterbacks in a bind. What Mike Tomlin teams do to Lamar Jackson is simple. And if you watch the tape, it'll break it down for you. They literally give him the outside routes. He has to throw the ball. He's so inefficient at throwing the ball outside the hash marks. They play 8 men in the box. They load the box. They protect the options. They protect the run game. And they give him the outside. If you look at the big plays that happened in that game for Baltimore, they were all along the outside. Lamar Jackson was 16 of 33. They play an umbrella-style coverage that makes him fit balls in to the corners. And not all teams can play that because not all teams have a TJ Watt to control the edge. Not all teams have a great safety to be able to control or watch the quarterback's eyes like the Steelers do. But they are uniquely fit to give Lamar Jackson fits. Over his career, he's struggled throwing the ball outside the hash marks. It's just real. I'm sorry. And we always blame the wide receivers. Oh, no wide receivers. He's got 4 first-round wide receivers. Rashad Bateman was a first-round wide receiver. Nelson Aguilar was a first-round wide receiver. Zay Flowers is a first-round wide receiver. He's had Hollywood Brown, who was a first-round wide receiver. It's not the wide receivers. It's the guy holding the bow and arrow. It's not the arrows. Mike Tomlin does a really good job exploiting that. And I don't think I think that when they're in M&T, Lamar can throw the ball a little bit better and they move the ball a little bit more efficiently versus Pittsburgh. But he definitely has a Steelers problem, especially at Pittsburgh. It's not pretty. 16-33 is not something that he had his most efficient season going into this year. Into this game, Lamar Jackson was having his most efficient season. Chalk it up, move on. Hope you don't see him in the playoffs.
Right. Now, if you are a Buffalo Bills fan this week, you feel like you're going to the Super Bowl because you knocked off the Kansas City Chiefs. And again, I take nothing. You did it. You did what you had to do. You beat Kansas City. That's great if you're Buffalo because it keeps you alive for the 1 seed. Obviously, you need a little bit of help from Kansas City to get there. But that door would have been closed had you lost to Kansas City for all intents and purposes. So you keep the 1 seed open for now. You're playing great football. I think Josh Allen is playing some of the best football of his career. So all things are roses if you're Buffalo right now. But I have to look at it, Gene. And again, is it just one game or is this a tell of what we're going to see moving on? How many times does Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills have to break your heart before you accept that Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are going to break your heart? Now, I look at this and I say, great, you beat him in the regular season. Great. Josh Allen is playing probably the best football, and he's putting together the most efficient, non-turnover resume that he's put together in his entire football career. And you're doing it without a Stephon Diggs, and you're doing it without a number 1 prime receiver. That's amazing. But who are you taking? Who are you taking come playoff time? Are you taking Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills, to do the thing they haven't done yet? The thing that we've said they were going to be doing for the past 4 or 5 years that they seem to not be able to do? Or are you taking the guy in Patrick Mahomes that has done it with no weapons on offense, that has done it with practically all rookies on the defense, that has done it in situations where they've never won on the road in the playoff. They never had to play on the road. Now they have to go on the road 3 times. They're not going to win all those games. He's done it. Like, Mahomes has done it all with all the issues, overcoming everything. He's going to lose at some point. I'm not saying Mahomes is going to win every playoff game for the rest of his NFL career. But, Gene, what I'm saying is if you're a Buffalo fan this morning, take it for what it is. You beat him in the regular season. If everything holds the same and you can pull some stuff out of that game from the playoffs, great. But let's not forget, if you meet in the playoffs, they got the better coach in Andy Reid. I think they have the better quarterback in Patrick Mahomes.
You
think? Listen, I'm trying to be nice to Josh Allen people this morning, all right? I'm not. So I'm trying to be nicer than I usually am. But, Gene, those are real things you have to overcome. When you don't have the best quarterback on the field, you have to overcome. When you're going against a superior head coach, you have to overcome. And let's not act like Sean McDermott hasn't been outcoached time after time in the playoffs in these big spots, because he has been. Now, granted, usually it's against someone like an Andy Reid, and I get it. He's going to outcoach most people in big spots. He's a great head coach. It is what it is. But those are the things you have to overcome come playoff time. I'm not convinced this morning that Buffalo is any more in a better position to beat Kansas City come the playoffs than they were before this week. I almost predicted Buffalo was going to beat Kansas City in the playoffs because I think they needed it more. Because if Buffalo loses this game, the narrative is, they're good, but they're not that great. The Chiefs are still the best team in the AFC. Buffalo wins this game, and now you see what the narrative is. Buffalo's definitely number 2. Buffalo could have the kryptonite come the playoffs. I'm not saying the Chiefs didn't want to win, Gene, but I'm saying it's just one of those things where I think Buffalo needed it more. It was at home. A lot of things lined up nicely. There were some moments from Patrick Mahomes, and he's got to play better football. Let's be honest. Mahomes needs to play some better football, but I would still take the Chiefs today in the playoffs against the Bills.
So you say all that, and all those things lined up for Buffalo, yet they still needed a 4th and 2 and not kick the field goal on 4th and 2.5, 4th and maybe 3. They went for it because they were so scared that Patrick Mahomes is going to get that ball and go down the field and beat them again. I'm not worried one bit if I'm Kansas City. Not one bit. Not one bit. I'm not worried one bit. Kansas City's going to get healthier as the season goes on. Hollywood Brown's going to play games for them. They have DeAndre Hopkins. They're going to continuously grow with Patrick Mahomes and DeAndre Hopkins. Travis Kelce's going to get in better football shape. The defense has shown you time and time again to come playoffs. And what they did versus Buffalo is what they do versus all good teams. They smothered the box and didn't allow them to run the football. The only person that ran the football in Buffalo was Josh Allen, which a lot of those were broken play scrambles. James Cook had 9 carries for 20 yards. They ran the ball for 3.4 yards per carry. That is not, and if you look at what Buffalo's offense did in that game, it was a ton of bubble screen to Khalil Shakir. That was their run game. And even late in that game, Kansas City had jumped right in front of one of those bubble screens, right in front of it, and just missed it. Could have been catastrophic for Buffalo. I don't think Buffalo played that great either, if I'm being completely honest with you. I think Kansas City has been walking around town with a big sign that says "Beat Me" on it. And they've been trying to get beat these last few months. They look like the University of Miami did in college football. They've been trying to lose football games. They tried to lose to Denver. They've tried to lose football games over this last month. This last month is not when it matters. When it matters is the end of December and January. And the Chiefs have shown you that they have a switch that they can turn on in the playoffs. And I do not think the Buffalo Bills, a team that's shown you that they do not have this switch in the playoffs, is the team that's going to knock off Kansas City. I don't. Sorry. And Andy Reid can be had. He will be had. It will happen. Just don't think it's by Buffalo.
Gene, if I told you I was taking prime Derrick Henry.
Okay.
One season, prime Derrick Henry and all his Derrick Henry greatness. And you could have any other running back. Prime that running back 1 year. How many running backs are on that list ahead of Derrick Henry?
I mean, I can think of 5 off the top of my head pretty easily. Yeah, obviously the big 3, Barry, Jim Brown, Walter, those 3 are 100% prime versus prime better. I really loved what LaDainian Tomlinson did to the game of football, and from all perspectives. He was a small running back that actually ran for power and caught the football. I'm modern day NFL. I'm taking Marshall Faulk. I'm taking Adrian Peterson. Those guys were just different in a different world. And I don't know.
Do you take Le'Veon?
No.
With his pass catching?
No. I don't think I've always been under the inclination that Le'Veon Bell was just a tad bit overrated.
Okay.
I'm the only one that comes to mind, and it's actually, it's like flipping a coin. It's heads or tails. Heads is I got the bruiser that can run hard, and tails is I got the scat back that can do everything. It's Christian McCaffrey. That's the close one, prime versus prime. But I guess there's 7, 8 maybe. Derrick Henry's great. He's phenomenal. I'm taking him over tons of running backs. Don't let this be like a bash Derrick Henry thing, but I think there's 7 or 8.
So he's top 10 all time. That's where we're going with this.
Correct.
Is he top 10 all time?
Yes.
Okay.
I think he is.
I think he is too.
And in this NFL, it's totally different, right? So like previous NFLs, you relied a lot more on the running backs and their shelf life was a lot longer. If you look at the list of active running backs that have 10,000 yards, it's Derrick Henry, and then there's like a 3,000 yard gap. Like no one's going to catch him.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
It's just no one's going to catch him. I feel like that the shelf life of running backs are just so light, and you have to be so special. And even Christian McCaffrey coming off such a special year last year, this year he has Achilles problems. I don't know. Derrick Henry's durable. He's done it for a long time. And what's his best season? Could it be this season?
Could be.
Could it be the year he ran for 2,000 in Tennessee? Like, there's so many. I feel like his prime has been extended too.
Before we get you out of here, Gene, Adam Schefter said yesterday that he is certain there will be no less than 7 NFL head coaching vacancies going into the off season. So with that in mind, let's find out who the 7 might be, because he said in no uncertain terms it is going to be at least 7. So let's start in the NFC, and we're just going to start with bottom of divisions, and you're going to give me the yes or the no. Are they going to replace their head coach? Should they replace their head coach? And where are we ultimately going to end up? Let's start with the train wreck that is the Carolina Panthers, who are currently 3-7.
No, don't think they'd replace her. I think Canales is there for at least a couple years.
Obviously, the New Orleans Saints have already fired their head coach, so they are going to have a head coaching search. So that is going to be 1 with the New Orleans Saints. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are currently 4-6. If they finish under 500, will there be a coaching change?
No. Had significant injuries this year. Development of Baker continues to move forward. Their defense looks good. I think Todd Bowles is safe.
What if the Atlanta Falcons finish under 500?
First year, Raheem Morris, I think he's good.
Chicago Bears 4-6. There's one.
Yes, Matt Eberflus is gone.
We
and
basically already talked
such
about
a
that.
Chicago thing to do.
The rest of that division is fine, I would assume. The Packers, the Vikings, the Lions all have winning records right now. All are.
You don't think Dan Campbell gets fired?
What's
I'm
that?
kidding.
Right, we gotta get rid of Dan. He's not doing well enough over there. Is there any remote outside possibility there is a change in San Francisco if they finish last in their division?
No. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are like lamb and tuna fish.
How about the Seattle Seahawks, who are currently 5-5?
I think Mike McDonald's perfectly fine there.
Does McVay continue to want to coach? Because he's been flirting with retirement like nonstop the last 3 years.
He's got Akuna Matata and Puka Nacua. I think that he continues. I think he's there for another couple years.
All right, so we're at 2 right now, heading into the NFC East. We got the New York Giants and Brian Daboll.
That's a fun one. And you asked 2 questions when you started this. Will they and should they? Should they? No. Will they? Maybe. I'll go yes, they will, but I don't think they should.
All right, we're up to 3. How about the Dallas Cowboys?
So easy. There's never been a more fire me sign on him.
So we are at 4 as we leave the NFC. Let's go to the AFC. Jacksonville is 2-9.
Oh, easy. Doug should got fired Monday. I don't know how he didn't get fired Monday. And by the way, if you want some entertainment, go watch a Doug Peterson press conference right now, because he's trying so hard to they asked him a question like, who told Shad this is the best roster ever assembled? He goes, I don't know. And they're like, was it you? He goes, no. It's really funny if you watch it. But
all right, so that's number 5. How about the Tennessee Titans?
No, Callahan's safe. He didn't draft a quarterback.
The Colts and Texans should be good. Cleveland Browns?
They shouldn't. 2-time coach of the year over there. Deshaun Watson, I guarantee you, was not Stefanski's choice.
No.
I'm giving him at least another year with a choice quarterback.
Is it time for a coaching change in Cincinnati?
I mean, I'm going to be the opposite end of the spectrum. It should, it won't. I think Zach Taylor is probably the most overrated coach in football.
By far, right? By far.
Took the Bengals to the Super Bowl in one miracle run. And it's like, you got Joe Burrow. You know what's funny about Cincinnati? You have the leading passer, the leading receiver, and the leading sacker in the NFL. And you're 4-7.
Right. Ravens and Steelers should be good. How about the Raiders with Antonio Pierce?
Oh, it depends. They shouldn't. They probably will. So I'm going to go yes.
So that would be number 6. The Broncos, the Chargers, the Chiefs should
All
be
safe.
fine. Patriots should be fine. It's only year 1. That means the Jets would be your 7th.
Yep.
And then does anything happen in Buffalo or Miami? Miami, if they don't make the playoffs and it's a losing season. Buffalo, if things are looking great and it's a first-round playoff exit.
I don't think either team fires their coach. I think I think Buffalo values stability. And the one thing I'll give Stephen Ross, I'm not a Stephen Ross fan, you know this before, but as long as Tua is the starting quarterback there, McDaniel's going to have a job, in my opinion.
I am also not a huge Stephen Ross fan because I don't think anyone should be. But
Terrible.
since hiring Mike McDaniel, we ain't seen Stephen Ross, and it's great. We're not getting
Isn't it-
Stephen Ross stories. No
Yeah.
one's talking about Stephen Ross. It's amazing.
Not on a boat with Tom Brady.
Nope. It's amazing that when you kind of get the coaching hire right, you never see Stephen Ross anymore.
I love
And
that.
even during the game, they're not showing Ross in the box. They show Marino in the box. It's great. You don't even see the guy. It's fantastic.
That is a real underrated move for the Miami Dolphins to have Dan Marino just be your spokesperson, your advocate. Getting him back in the fold is huge. I think Dan's the most underrated quarterback ever to play the game, and I think he gets judged so often because he didn't win a Super Bowl. When in reality, if you look at those rosters and you look at those teams, I don't think it was ever a Dan Marino problem.
No, absolutely not. Gene, what's happening on Wire to Wire Sports tonight?
We got a fun show tonight. I can't wait. And I was expecting you to bring it up this morning, but don't worry, there will be a full conversation tonight about the Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey. Bro, how great is that, dude? One of the youngest guys in the league, a young budding superstar, goes into a locker room and basically calls out the MVP player on the team. Like, you need to stop being late for everything.
Right.
Like, I love that. I love that. They're 2-11. Now, I will say this: we're gonna talk about that. Obviously, NFL, college football. We'll recap UFC. I will not give Jake Paul the time of day on my show, so we won't be talking about that. We're gonna talk about what's next for John Jones. That'll be a fun conversation. He wants Alex Pereira. The rest of the world does not want that fight. They want.
We didn't talk about it earlier. What did you think of the women's undercard?
It was great. It was the only good boxing match on that.
What was it? Was it the right call?
No, of course not.
Yeah,
Boxing. If you don't have a bad call in boxing, I don't know if you're watching boxing. Boxing is the perfect sport where you need to beat the opponent.
I watched 10 rounds of that, and I was like, "Oh, this is great. This other chick's got it." I don't watch boxing. I know nothing about boxing, and I see the result, and I'm like, "What? What? I thought it should have. What?"
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think it was that close, but
no, not at all.
Every score prediction showed you it wasn't close, but that's boxing, and it happens in the UFC often too. Judges, when you have 3 judges scoring the fight, you're kind of at subjectivity of what they think. And if you have one of them that's a little kooky, or one of them that's bought, you only need one.
And yes, if anyone thinks that boxing is on the up and up,
that's been their biggest problem for years.
Got some land for you, some lakefront property.
That's been their problem for years, though. Like, I've watched, man, Bernard Hopkins got robbed out of a fight. Oscar De La Hoya got robbed out of a fight. It's just I've watched boxing for years, and I've kind of given up on it because I don't like how corrupt the sport is, and UFC is just far more entertaining to me. But
all right, Gene, always a pleasure having you here on the Wednesday shows, sir. We're going to have you stick around for the closing. I'm going to do the closing today. Usually this is Mo's spot. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in this morning for Coffee and Sports, the morning show. Make sure you are coming back here, same time, same place tomorrow. We're breaking down all of the weekly picks in the NFL. We had a lot of big games last week. We had a lot of big games coming up this week as well. So make sure you're tuning in for all of that and more. Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network, and we'll see